Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to Gary Grigsby's Eagle Day to Bombing the Reich, and we are playing the Bombing the Reich version of that. This is a remake or repackaging of two separate games which were released in the 1990s by Talentsoft, one Eagle Day, which was looking at the Battle of Britain, and one Bombing the Reich, which looks at the combined bomber offensive from August 1943 through to the conclusion of the war by the Allies against Germany. In our last video, we took a look at the game, but we were sort of playing through. I was talking about the game as we were watching the turn replay for the first turn, August 17th, to play out. We didn't get to the end of that because I had the details turned up, and this is a monster game that will basically pause for a few seconds to tell you 3 B-17s hit by flak, 1 B-17 destroyed, 1 BF-109 hit by flak, as a raid progresses sort of in 4-minute increments. So the turns can take a while. They don't have to, however. If you turn those notifications down or off, things speed up. And rather than make you guys watch the rest of that turn, which was played out in slow time, I decided to just jump to the results. Now, I'm into the next turn, which is August 18th. This game has one-day turns, so I don't have all of the details for you, but what I can share with you is the first day's action included 4,300 Allied sorties. That is a maximum effort. That was some aircraft flying more than once. That was basically every single one of our bombers and fighters was in the air. Almost every single one of our recon planes was in the air. Of those 4,300 aircraft, we lost 131. That's quite a few aircraft lost. We also lost quite a few aircraft damaged as well. I think we've got like over 500 aircraft that are currently not serviceable and are damaged. We lost 67 pilots KIA, 49 missing in action, and 21 wounded. We saw the Germans fly 1,214 sorties against our raids. However, they lost 147 aircraft, and that's important to note because in a 1-to-1 showdown, if the Germans lose one aircraft for every aircraft that we lose, we will win and we will smash them. They have to inflict heavier casualties on us than we do on them in order to have any chance. They also lost 41 aircraft pilots killed in action. That's another important statistic. And they lost 47 wounded in action. So nearly 90 of their highly skilled pilots are currently out of action. I'm not really sure what I need to do to defeat them. I know I need to destroy a lot of their aircraft. I imagine 140 aircraft a day is well beyond the German military's ability to replenish. I mean, if you extrapolate that out over a whole month, that's more than 3,000 aircraft a month. I don't think Germany's building 3,000 or even anywhere close to that. Actually, it's closer to 4,500 a month when you factor in 147. So I'm pretty confident in saying that day they lost a lot more aircraft than they were able to build. Our 131 losses, I think it depends where we lost those aircraft, but overall, we probably shouldn't lose that many, but we're more able to replace those losses than the Germans are, especially because a lot of those losses were on the fighter side, which are smaller, less complicated aircraft, and less so on the bomber side. With that being said, that was the first day's action. Now, the raids that we launched on the first day were heavily focused on oil targets, specifically oil storage facilities. So I launched 3 raids at oil storage facilities in and around Amsterdam, which did severe damage, 100, 99, and 90% damage to the 3 oil storage locations in and around Amsterdam. I launched raids against Rotterdam and destroyed 99% of the oil facilities there, and 1 oil raid against Wilsmar Rafrum, blah, 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 which is near Flushing here on the, I believe that's Belgian coast, which did 99 damage. That is pretty much the bulk of the oil storage facilities in occupied Europe outside of Germany. There was 1 additional oil storage facility which I didn't attack, which is just outside Paris, which we will probably bomb today. And then there are some oil production facilities as well. Those were all the raids in France. I did also launch a raid against Emden in Germany with the British bombing force, so a nighttime raid against Emden. We crippled the rail facilities in Emden. It's an area target, so the British night bombers just basically attempt to firebomb the city and wipe the city out. We did about, what does it look like here, 45 or 54% damage against Emden, which is, I thought it was lower than that. That's actually pretty high. 54% of the city was destroyed, and 99% of its rail yard was destroyed. So that is a pretty darn good raid. You can see here there are other targets that are damaged. You can see Hamburg, for example, has 34% damage. Wilhelmshaven, 36% damage. And those are a result of sort of, I think it was the Hamburg firestorm, which occurred earlier in 1943, which you can see here affects a lot of the in and around surrounding areas around Hamburg. Damage was higher than that, but that's interesting. Anyway, so that is the result of the most recent turn. Now, we have more raids planned, quite a few more raids planned. Now, a lot of these are recon here, but I am going to be launching a return strike here on Amatex. It had 90% damage, so I want to follow that up. I'm also launching recon flights out on the targets I hit yesterday to make sure that the damage is what the targets reported as damage. I then also am launching some raids down here in the south. The game kind of gets a little bit laggy when you try and view all these things written on the screen. But I am also launching some raids against targets in and around Paris. So if we zoom in here, we will see... Come on, game. You can do it. We're going to launch a raid against a chemical facility here, which produces both oil and rubber, and the oil storage facility in and around Paris. Bailey Petrol. After that, we'll really have to start diving into Germany if we want to start wiping out petrol facilities, and that is my objective. I also have some fighter sweeps that are running against some air bases where we identified enemy fighters. So there's 38 fighters here at Tilley Airfield. We're going to be running a fighter sweep there. We're going to be running a fighter sweep at Beaumont-le-Roger Airfield. 24 enemy fighters are spotted on the ground there. And Châteaudun Airfield, which has 40 fighters. We're doing that because we're also running a effort to destroy the Luftwaffe, as we've already said, and destroying German aircraft on the ground is far easier than destroying them in the air. So the more we can destroy on the ground, the better, the less that will scramble up against us. My overarching campaign here is not focused against the targets that win you the most points at this stage, but focused more on sort of making the Luftwaffe not be such a dangerous threat. So my goal is, by taking out these oil facilities, we're going to limit how many enemy aircraft can fly against us, because the aircraft to fly have to have fuel. These oil storage facilities supply the fuel to the airfields that allow the aircraft to take off. So by destroying these storage facilities, we will limit the Luftwaffe's ability to fly large numbers of sorties against us. In conjunction with that, we also need to destroy their chemical factories. So chemical factories produce synthetic oil, which can be used to fuel their aircraft. So we need to destroy their oil refineries, their oil storage facilities, and the chemical factories, all of which contribute to providing fuel for the Luftwaffe. So we've already done quite a bit of damage to the oil storage facilities in France, and in our next turn, we're going to be beginning the bombing against the sort of chemical factories as well. Here, one of them in and around Amsterdam. That's not it. Where is it? If we look at these missions here, if we review these missions, we can see a lot of recon flights, chemical factory in Saint-Gobain, which is near Paris, and then a chemical facility at Sauvigny, which is over here near Brooks. So this is a rather large chemical facility, capacity 8. That's pretty high. The one near Paris is capacity 3. We've got some 118 bombers going against the capacity 8, 155 going against the capacity 3. The 155 are going against Paris. So sort of double-edged sword here. I'm attacking these two facilities with B-17s, the oil storage facility and the chemical factory around Paris. I am preceding those raids with the fighter sweeps that I demonstrated against those airfields. The idea is the fighters are going to swoop in on those airfields, they're going to knock the aircraft off on the ground, and then the B-17s will come in, so the German aircraft that would have scrambled against them will either be disoriented or will not scramble. If they do get off the ground, the aircraft that stay at the airfields kind of linger for a little bit around those airfields, and there's a chance they can shoot down the enemy aircraft as they're either taking off or as they're landing. So that's the overall objective there. So we're launching raids in Paris and against Paris and Belgium. We're also going to return to Emden to try and finish the city off. It suffered 50% damage. We're going to hit it again. It's at a 54% damage. You can see if we review these raids, the largest raid that we're launching is 633 aircraft returning to Emden, hopefully to get that damage level up above 90%, and then we'll move on to destroying another German city. The reason I'm targeting Emden, frankly, is it's near the coast. It'll have a clearly defined coastline, which at least historically was seriously beneficial to bombers that were trying to raid against Germany if they had a clear delineation of where the city started that made it easier to target. Additionally, it's just closer to the coast, so there's less risk of losing aircraft to flak and enemy fighters as they progress through Germany. I'm going to try and gradually work my way into destroying Germany and hitting the coastal cities first, while perhaps not as big of a terror point advantage as destroying cities like Berlin, will still be something that I think adds value. After that, I'm also going to move my bombers on to hitting the oil storage facilities in and around Emden. So you can see here they're both two very large oil facilities. They're Kriegsmarine 1 and 2 oil facilities in and around Emden. Again, same logic for hitting those facilities. Not doing it this turn, but I will end up targeting them because they're near the coast. As much oil as I can destroy in these facilities as possible, as quickly as possible, I think will be useful, because my other goal is if I destroy a whole bunch of their standing stockpile, then even if their factories are still producing, they're going to be producing to replace a deficit. And hopefully we'll get them kind of in a fatal funnel. Now, the one thing that does kind of question whether my strategy is the right strategy is the fact that, oddly enough, oil storage and oil refineries are not classified as critical industries in this game. And they also appear to only impact the fuel shortages, which reduce the amount of sorties that German aircraft can take off and basically fly, which to me, that seems a little bit of a faulty game design. Maybe it's done for balancing reasons, I'm not sure, but if you cripple oil, you should also cripple troops. Troops should need to consume oil. Additionally, if you cripple oil, you should also cripple sort of internal transport and production and other things like this. Oil is sort of a, as Bomber Harris would have called it, a panacea target, where if you can destroy it, the entire economy will come to a crashing halt. The game doesn't seem to reflect that. It seems to mainly basically say you're targeting aviation fuel, which, okay, I guess you don't want to make any one target too easy to hit, I guess. But the total capacity is quite large. There's 70 plus locations that are refineries. Chemical factories produce oil as well. The reason I'm targeting the chemical factories though is because they are classified as critical industries, which I believe is what gives you like points for scoring things when it comes to scoring your industrial damage. So if you take a look at the campaign summary here, you'll see that one of the scoring up here, you get points for how many aircraft you have ready, you get points for strategic bombing, which I believe is principally when you destroy critical industries, and you get points for terror bombing, which is when you destroy cities. The Germans get points for ready aircraft, so our campaigns against their aircraft are important. So those fighter sweeps are valuable there, and they also get points for industrial output. So if you destroy their factories, that lowers their industrial output. I don't know if industrial output includes things like U-boats, which are specifically labeled as not counting toward industrial damage, or what. I need to understand the rules a little bit better. I would think maybe destroying oil facilities will still help the industrial damage points, but maybe not as much as critical industries. I'm really not sure. In addition to that, we're going to be flying a series of fighter sweeps down here in Italy against Palsley Airfield, 28 fighters, Fabriza Airfield, 26 fighters. We're not flying against Vibo because it only has 3, but we are going to be flying against Crotona, which has 47 fighters, and I think I also sent a fighter sweep out to Grottaglia. Wow, I shouldn't even try. The airfield near Taranto, which has an additional 64 enemy fighter aircraft. My bombing efforts are a little bit weaker in Italy. I'm giving some of my bombers some time to rest. Their morale took a little bit larger of a hit down there, but I am going to be bombing the 29th Panzer Grenadier troops with multiple waves of bombers, including some B-17s down here in southern Italy. My goal in Italy is a little bit different. I want to wipe the German Air Force out on the ground, and then my bombing objective is really to destroy as many of these land units as possible, because if we do defeat these troops, like if we cause these troops to be horribly badly damaged, then when we do land in Italy in September with the main invasion in and around Salerno, the Allies will advance through Italy more quickly than, potentially more quickly than historically occurred. But that is our current setup right now. If we review all missions here, you can see we've got a number of large raids here, 633 against Emden, 228 against the oil facility in and around Bailey, 155 against St. Gobain, 118 against Solvolny, 88 against multiple 80 bomber raids, one by the 97th Bomb Group, one by the 12th Bomb Group against the 29th Panzer Grenadier, as well as some smaller raids of 60 bombers 50 bombers against that. And then these raids here with just these coordinates are raids against airfields. So you can see here these fighter sweeps against airfields with both bombers and fighters strafing and bombing the airfields. So we'll see how that all plays out, but that is what we're looking at for this turn. And with the magic waving of my hands, the turn has concluded itself, and we are into the post-turn 2 phase. So if we take a look here, we can actually look at the action reports of all of those raids I was just talking to you about, and we can say, all right, how many bombers? Let's go to the top of the list, see what those raids did. So our largest raid against Emden, 633 bombers. We lost 11 bombers out of that force. We did 90 damage to the city, or we brought the total damage of the city up to 90. So if you remember, it was 54, now it's 90. That city is pounded and pretty damn destroyed. Emden, 90% of it's destroyed, urban damage, 99 rail capacity still, 19 heavy flak guns in defense there, but obviously that city's going to take a while to recover. At 11 bombers destroyed out of 633, that is 1.7%. That is well within sort of Bomber Command's replaceable losses at a much higher percentage. But still below, like 6% maybe. We lost 10 of the bombers attacking Bailey, the oil facility in and around Paris. They only did 4 damage, so I'd have to go back and look at the replay again, but I'm pretty sure there was bad weather over the target, or for whatever reason, the bombers just failed to hit their target accurately. You know, the first turn we had a lot of really good hits on the targets that we were bombing. Did a lot of heavy damage, but this will happen sometimes where you have very little damage inflicted. We lost 3 bombers, 3 fighters, and the Germans lost 3 fighters intercepting us, but we only did 4 damage, so obviously not a very satisfactory raid. The raids on the chemical facilities, however, went better. 99% damage on both St. Gobain and Solvany, without any bombers lost on either of those raids. Those raids occurred a little bit later, so I put the heavy bombers in first to draw up the German fighters, and then once those fighters had already committed to intercepting the B-17s over here, that kind of gave these other raids a little bit of a cleaner track on their missions here. So that's good. For both St. Gobain and the Solvany chemical factories. The raids on the 29th Panzer Grenadier, now this is a full division, I believe, so a couple of raids aren't going to completely destroy them. We lost 2 bombers out of one of the raids and 3 out of the other. German troops are at 33% damage or disruption, which basically means, like, yeah, they still have a lot of their equipment, but they're in a little bit of disrepair or disrepute, if you will. You can see here, if we zoom in a little bit, the 29th is the most southern German unit. It is orange, which means it's not as effective as it could be, although it still has a lot of equipment, 56 tanks, 58 105mm artillery pieces, 101 infantry, 6 heavy artillery, 6 heavy anti-aircraft, and 52 light anti-aircraft. That was the main raid we did there. We did a lot of fighter sweeps, but that's about it. We did do some other raids here. We re-attacked Amex, which was at 90% damage that I mentioned to you. It is now at 99, so that was a success. Another raid against the Panzer Grenadiers and the Emden raids, etc. So if we take a look at the raids where we did the most damage to the Germans, interestingly enough, our night fighters did really well in this turn here. You can see we had 3 night interdiction raids. We actually had several sort of half squadrons and night fighters that were following the raid in on Emden. So what I like to do when I have my bomber raids go toward a target is I'll have RCM aircraft, which are like radio countermeasure aircraft, and night fighters go in as well along similar paths. Sometimes I send RCM aircraft out to different locations, like I believe I sent 1 radio countermeasure aircraft to Berlin, I sent 1 to Leipzig, I sent 1 to the Ruhr to try and draw German fighters away, because these are radio countermeasures, so they should be sort of disrupting or confusing the German defenses, so they scramble aircraft to the wrong place. But then I also send some with the main force as well, again, to add confusion, to jam them, to hopefully do those kind of activities. And then with the main raid, I also send in night fighters. And these guys did really well in terms of aerial combat. We had 1 night fighter squadron, or half squadron, it was like 6 aircraft, shoot down 7 German night fighters over Emden. Another one over Emden shot down 5 more. Another one shot down 3 more. So of those night fighters, the Germans lost 15 fighter aircraft trying to intercept that raid over Emden. That's a pretty big tally for night fighters. Night fighters aren't like fighter groups when you scramble, or when you launch a fighter group again with the B-17s, you'll be sending in like one of the American fighter groups tend to be like 48 aircraft. So you're sending in 48 fighters in one of your squadrons. You might send 3 or 4 out to escort a bombing wave. When you bomb a city at night, the Germans will send up interceptors in 1Z, 2Zs. So again, you're sending your fighters out in groups of 6 or 3, and or sometimes even 1. So the fact that, this group of 6 night fighters shot down 7 enemy fighters, they shot down more aircraft than were in their entire formation. This one shot down 5, almost a 1-to-1, and this one shot down 3, still very successful. So the Germans lost quite a few night fighters trying to stop our raids. If we look at the campaign summary screen, well, actually, let's not do that. Let's look at the aircraft replacements. Whoops, wrong button. I keep clicking all the wrong ones. Let's take a look at aircraft losses here for today. So this gives us a big screen, which you haven't seen before, which lists out every single aircraft that you've lost during this campaign. It gives you the total number of losses here on the left. It gives you today's losses on the right. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear to be scrollable, as far as I can tell. You just kind of have to go down the list. They stay where they are. You can see yesterday the Germans lost 7 Bf-109 G2s. They lost none today. They lost 4 G5s. They lost 1 today. So actually they lost 3 yesterday. That's 4 total. The German G6, sort of the backbone of their interceptor force, the Bf-109 G6, the Germans lost 34 of those yesterday, so quite a heavy toll. They lost 17 today. I'm pretty sure they don't make 17 of those per day, so still another good day. They lost 14 F-190 A5s. They lost 14 yesterday, so another bad day for that. 31 D520s were destroyed today. I believe those are Italian. I'm not quite sure. Those are kind of... I don't know if I get to count those really as kills, because actually they're a French fighter aircraft that entered service in early 1940, shortly after the Second World War, and was retired after the war in 1953. They built around 900 of them, and the Luftwaffe did take some of them over. So I guess they are fighter aircraft in a sense, but they're not likely anything that we're going to face over the course of the campaign in substantial numbers. Nonetheless, 31 of them probably crippled a fighter squadron or group or something or other, so that's good. 17 F-190Fs, which I thought are like ground attack versions, which is weird because I don't think the Germans have any bombers in this. Nonetheless, another 117 high-quality F-190 aircraft, and then we destroyed some Italian aircraft as well. All in all, the Germans lost 114 aircraft again today. So in conjunction with their 40 some odd aircraft they lost the first day, lost 114 again today. That means they're averaging 130 aircraft lost per day so far in these 2 days of the campaign. That is 4,000 aircraft a month. They can't replace those losses. So that's good. The bad news is, with all of the losses that we've taken, we probably need to take a day off or 2 days off before we launch another serious effort. This was, again, not quite as heavy an effort for us today, but another max effort day, really, 3,500 sorties. The Germans only got 921 off the ground today, so 300 fewer than yesterday. But again, we had about 800 fewer aircraft of ours in the air. You can see the biggest loss today was for our B-17s. They had about 600 B-17s between the Italian front and the European front were in the air. We lost 12. That compares with 7 yesterday. That was a little bit worse of a day for the heavy bombers. We also lost 7 Spitfire VCs, or I don't know what model number that would be bad. I know this is the Spitfire LF8, but what's a C? Isn't that like a 50 or something, like 550? And then we lost 9 Typhoon 1Bs, sort of the ground attack aircraft. So we did lose pretty heavily. We lost 83 aircraft. We're up to 214 losses, but the German losses exceed our own, and that always makes me happy. If we take a look at our top pilots here, we can see we've got a couple of pilots with 2 kills. Actually, we've got one with 3. So let's refilter that. Jules Frays, Sergeant Lieutenant, 418 Squadron, a Canadian who flies Mosquito night fighters. Might have been in one of those units that knocked out 6 enemy fighters, or 7 even, or 5 and 7. So he got 3. Richard Cleaver has 2 kills, also a British pilot. This one, or a Commonwealth pilot. He's British. The first was Canadian. He flies Spitfires. He has 2 kills now. 68 Squadron, another British. Arthur L. Spungern has 2 kills, another night fighter squadron guy. At least I assume he is if he's flying the Beaufighter. I don't think we operate those at day. And then a bunch of guys with 1 kill, including a whole bunch of bomber pilots, fighter pilots, attack pilots, and some of those have been wounded in action. So that's what the sort of top pilot section looks like. Targets, we already did that. After action reports, we already did that. Air units, I don't really want to show you every single air unit on the map. We want to replay the turn? No, I'd rather not replay. So that's about it. That's where we're at, guys. So I think as we get into the next turn, we'll probably look at sort of expanding. Maybe, I'm not sure if we want to return to Paris or not. I think we did quite a bit of damage on some of these airfields here in and around Paris where we had our fighter sweeps. Just trying to figure out, there's a lot of airfields here, which ones we did it for. But there's sort of maybe a desire to return to Bailey Petro Oil and Kuhlman Chemical Works, which Kuhlman suffered 15 damage, not much. Bailey suffered 4 damage, again, not much. So those facilities weren't terribly heavily hit. We hit the 2 chemical factories in Belgium very well, but we had good weather again. So that's always another thing you got to factor in. You always have to worry about the clouds getting in the way of your raids. You can see here as I turn clouds on or off, we can see these 2 targets that we hit were definitely in good weather. Similarly, very little clouds over Amex. Let's actually take a look and see. We go to Paris. Looks like there may have been quite a bit of cloud cover. The game gets extremely laggy when you kind of do some of these overlays that add a whole bunch of sort of things the game has to process. Turn clouds on over Paris. Maybe that was the issue. We have the target's on the fringe of cloud cover, so maybe Paris itself wasn't in cloud cover, but these guys over here were. So maybe that was it. Maybe that was why we had to worry about that. And then, oh, okay, so interesting here. I can turn urban areas on or off, which I assume shows us where the damage of an urban area is. Do this. There's this little circle and shows us where the damage is. Go over here. Go to Emden. The urban area over Emden. Yes, so you can see that is clearly, if we zoom in here, we can see quite a bit of damage. I don't know if these yellow areas mean there are active fires while the black areas were like burned out. I'm not really sure. But that does give you a sense for the amount of damage within the city that has actually been done. You can see Bremen has a lot more damage. Hamburg also. All this blacked out area, I assume, are destroyed. I don't know if they can rebuild urban areas, really. And you're not going to rebuild a city that's destroyed, probably. It does look like there was some urban damage done to Amsterdam as a result of those oil facilities that we hit. So that I do hope that does occur. I hope, not that I want collateral damage, but in this game, if we're going to be waging a bombing campaign against Germany, I do hope the game does have collateral damage, because that would really help. Like if we're bombing a factory in a city and we miss the factory somewhat, or even hit the factory, if the factory is in the city, that should do city damage. I do know it does work that way for rail yards, so if you're flying as the Americans and you target an urban area, it actually has you bomb the marshalling yards rather than the city itself. But if your bombs miss, the game specifically says that can cause city damage and do terror damage. I don't know how that works with cities like this, where there's all these factories in and around the actual city, you know, if that can do the same thing or not. Nonetheless, that's the end of this phase here. So we'll go ahead and exit the briefing, and we're going to be moving on to day 3 of the bomber campaign, August 19th, 1943, and that's where we're probably going to leave off. I don't think I'm going to be doing daily turns. That would be a lot of turns, but I am going to keep you guys posted periodically, let you know where we're at as we progress. So far, the oil campaign's going well. If we see the, we see the target list here, you can see oil storage, 9% of total German oil storage is damaged, 14% of total German factories, 11% of German chemical facilities. So the most damage so far has been to rubber factories, interestingly enough. Second most to U-boat factories. That's the other thing, is U-boat factories don't really do anything for you, but sometimes you are required to bomb them. And they're kind of deep into Germany, so rather not. You do get factory damage credit if you hit U-boat factories. You don't get factory damage credit if you hit German, like U-boat pens or like that. So that's the situation right now. Again, I think we'll probably have to take a day off mostly from bombing much. I may move some aircraft around. That's the other thing, is some of my fighters don't have great range. Well, I've got some units that are kind of spread out across North Africa, and I've also got some air bases in Sicily that are unoccupied, so maybe moving some of these guys into Sicily to get them a little bit closer to the front. I think that's more possible in North Africa than it is in England, where almost all of the fighters are already right on the coast. But it is what it is. I'm going to go ahead and save this game, and we'll go ahead and progress. And let me know what you guys think, guys. Was this a video that you enjoyed? Do you have any thoughts, feedback, comments? Let me know. Until next time, though, guys, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out.